Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and in the future from wherever you're joining, thank you. My name is Erica Hashemi, and I'm part of the Mojo Network's marketing team. On behalf of our presenter and myself, I would like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us for one of our exciting and new weekly demos. I would now like to introduce our presenter, Sean Blanton, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Mojo Network. Today, Sean's going to use the next 30 minutes to discuss the 5 things you can do today to balance your Wi-Fi budget and also demonstrate how Mojo Network's cloud-managed Wi-Fi eliminates unnecessary hardware costs and reduces your TCO with our simplified approach. And without any further delay, I'll go ahead and pass the floor to Sean.
All right. Thank you, Erica. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Very excited to talk to you today about how to maximize your Wi-Fi investment. We're going to look at 5 things you can do today to balance your Wi-Fi budget. You know, it's no secret out there that IT budgets are tight, and they have been for some time. But the growing challenge, especially as it relates to Wi-Fi, is on the importance of Wi-Fi. It is fastly becoming the prominent way of connecting to the network. Yet we need to do more and grow more Wi-Fi and do it with less expense and less complexity. And this presents a challenge. It requires us often to eliminate hardware, to leverage next generation management, and also to simplify packaging. And that's how we're going to be talking about the 5 things you can do to balance your budget, is looking at these different items, these different methods by which you can balance your budget by taking a look at hardware costs and reducing, and in some cases, removing that CapEx expenditure. With the next generation management, and then by leaning into simplified packaging, we're going to improve your OpEx. We're going to get you more for less. And ultimately, you're going to be paying for what you need. And it's going to be an easier method to gain that. Now, as we talk today, for those of you who've been watching our series, we tend to dive deep into our product platform. We want to show you exactly how you can do a lot of these things. And we're going to really focus on that effort when we look at next generation management. But the first thing I want to really look at is point number 1. And point number 1 really looks at removing hardware costs. So what do I mean by that? Well, first, it involves removing the controller completely. So we've seen a rising growth in cloud-managed Wi-Fi, and cloud-managed Wi-Fi is built upon architectures that do not require that central controller appliance. It distributes control to the edge. It moves management to the cloud. And because of that separation, we can significantly reduce the amount of hardware that we need to support our Wi-Fi infrastructure. And that's really great, not just because we're removing that element of hardware, but this reduces soft costs as well. Hosting and cooling within your data centers, the installation costs and the maintenance costs, all of these different components come into play. What we're also looking to do is we're looking to use open access points. Here, we're leveraging open configurations that do not lock us into proprietary systems. And what happens is we can start to reduce costs that way as well, because we recognize that so much of what's being driven at the hardware level is being driven by the chipset manufacturer. And that helps us a lot because on our side, we can focus very strongly on that next generation management. So if we take a look at some industry analysis, this is pulled from an analysis done by EMA recently, where they looked at the industry at large and understood and looked at Mojo as related to, in this case, the leading on-premise controller vendor. And you can see the cost savings are staggering. You know, I've worked with customers through my many years here. One in particular that is very representative of this shift is a distributed enterprise. I mean, they have 500 locations around the country, some of which are large campuses, but most require 2 to 3 access points per location, maybe a little bit more here, maybe even a little bit less there. For them, when they start to do the calculations and they include that traditional control architecture, it just becomes completely untenable. And so as you can see here, by removing that element and by moving to a cloud-managed approach that leverages open hardware from an access point perspective, we can see some very significant cost savings, in some cases up to 56%. And this is also uh, pretty large, even when compared to traditional cloud components that are still putting a premium on that access point hardware. So this is one of the big things that we can do to really balance our budget. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into the next generation management. What, from a platform perspective, can we do to really help balance the budget? And you can see here, we've really zeroed in on three key aspects. Number one, you want to automate aspects of your workflow to reduce time spent. So this is looking at you as an operator. I worked with a customer. It was a K-12. They had about 20 schools across their district, uh, somewhat distributed, certainly available by car any given school as necessary. But to hop from one school to the other usually required sometimes up to a couple hours worth of travel. Now, for them, they were working off of that traditional controller architecture. So they had a controller at every school. That included their high availability backup controller. And we're talking about a couple hundred access points per school being managed by each one of those controllers. Now, they were particularly challenged because they could only implement hardware or network changes on Sundays. It was not during the school week, and they hosted many events on Saturdays, so they had a policy about making hardware changes on Saturday due to these school functions. And as we talked, we estimated that it would take approximately 4 hours for this particular team to complete one firmware upgrade per school. So this is the process of bringing down a controller-based firmware update, applying it, distributing out the access points, and all the steps in between to make sure that the network involves as minimal downtime as possible. And even on these Sundays, it would still take a considerable amount of time to ensure that the firmware update went through, accounting for time loss if an issue arose. What did that mean? That meant that it would take 10 weeks to complete an upgrade cycle. For them, the solution was automating firmware upgrades. And let's take a look at how Mojo can do that. So as I hop into the Mojo platform, I'm going to dive into Wireless Manager. Wireless Manager is where we manage all of our Wi-Fi configurations and policies, both from an access and a security perspective. Now, as you can see, I'm diving into my environment here, and it's getting rather large. Here we have our corporate entities where we have a series of distributed enterprise branch offices, as well as our primary main offices also distributed throughout the country. To go to each one of these locations or to work within our regional data centers to make upgrades to our controllers would take a long time. So what we look at is automating that process. I have the ability, because my devices are all communicating simultaneously with the same central management console, I can actually build policies that would automate the process of updating devices, both as they connect to the cloud for the first time, as well as on our ongoing schedule. So this became a huge benefit to the customer I just mentioned, because for them, they were able to choose. They came into their lab environment and set an upgrade automatic schedule. Anytime a new upgrade came through on a Sunday, starting at midnight and running for the next 3 hours, they were able to automatically pull down those firmware updates for their handful of lab devices. They come in on a Monday, they were able to check that the APs were up and running, that they were running smooth, that the firmware upgrade was successful. And then from there, they could schedule the next Sunday to push out access point upgrades across their school district. Even if they cut their schools in half, they moved their 10-week upgrade cycle down to 3 weeks. And this proved to be significant savings from an overtime angle. They got their weekends back and their time back, and it allowed them to divert efforts to new and emerging projects. And this is just one example of how automation can come into play to improve your workflow and reduce time spent. Now, second to that, we look at using innovative tools. And what these tools allow us to do, especially in the context of Wi-Fi, is reduce the need for expensive Wi-Fi experience. Even those of us who have been in the industry for a long time can find it difficult to really pull apart and dig deep into the weeds when ongoing, persistent issues arise. This can be challenging because it means that we have longer downtime, we have more frustrated users. Again, working with a customer, we found that they were challenged with troubleshooting deeper Wi-Fi issues. They found themselves struggling with understanding what types of questions they should be asking, how they should be proceeding throughout the flow. And so much of Wi-Fi troubleshooting is built upon experience, especially when you get down to the packet capture. Especially challenging is when the calls coming in from their users are very simple and, very frankly, not helpful. The Wi-Fi is crap. That doesn't give their level one support team much to go on. They find themselves going through the motions, pulling in engineers and pulling them away from their projects, both new and current. So how did we help them? Well, we helped them by providing a platform that visualized these packet captures, and even more than that, did an analysis across the entire capture to provide direction. So let's take a look at that today. We call this particular platform Mojo Packets. Packets is a graphical packet analyzer. It's designed to take in these longer captures that we've run either on a per client or even per network basis. It pulls apart the components. Let's hop into a sample here. Right from the get-go, I'm being presented with an analysis. It's showing me precisely what it is that's going on. You can see here that we have things like client connectivity health classification and connectivity failures. So already I know that despite having multiple devices being picked up, I have one in particular I need to focus on. And that particular device, I know exactly what my failures are. So when that call comes in, the Wi-Fi isn't working. Even that level one support engineer can take a look at this dashboard and get a much clearer picture as to what the cause is. Is the cause actually affected by Wi-Fi? Could it be affected by the client itself? Or is it farther downstream from a DNS or perhaps even DHCP perspective? As we hop into the thread, we can actually look at this packet in its graphical form. And this also helps level one and moving into level two to diagnose the problem. Because I can look at what an average capture should look like and compare it to this. And this is clearly not an average capture. I have peaks and valleys where I should be looking at a steady data flow like I do here. Instead, I start to find myself with these association and authentication issues. And as I extend out, you can see here that I can focus in on very specific packets, those that are causing me trouble. I can open up the frames, I can start to look at them, but even the dashboard has helped me to understand that in this case, we have a client that is having difficulty connecting. All of this allows me to reduce the need for that experience, saving costs from a people perspective, distributing out that efforts, and making my uptime SLAs much higher. Now, number 4, when we talk about next generation management, we're diving now and looking at the architecture from a much bigger perspective. Here, we want to leverage an extensible cloud architecture. Number 1, it's going to seriously help us reduce storage and compute costs. When we move management to the cloud, we take advantage of everything the cloud brings us. Not only does Mojo have a dedicated cloud operations team whose sole form of ownership is to make sure that our cloud is up and running with the resources it needs, but even they have a dedicated team with our data center providers that allow us to ensure this SLA. And these storage costs and these compute costs do not make themselves known to the end user. And that is a big advantage. But in addition to that, the extensibility allows us to create new workflows, allows us to automate even further, and most importantly, allows us to orchestrate and allows us to build a platform that works for our team and allows the system to work for itself. So again, I worked with a retail company a while back that was really focused on using Wi-Fi from a lot of different angles. Now, they had their security concerns. They had compliance that was driving a need to get visibility and to make sure that they were certainly avoiding the potential cost of a breach. Now, Wi-Fi was going to be used for a lot of different purposes. They had guest networks they wanted to develop, IoT networks they wanted to develop, and they also wanted to move this into their larger corporate use. They were also interested in looking at Wi-Fi data and distributing access to other lines of business. This was going to help them get more out of their investment. It was going to allow for them to have higher stakeholders, recognizing that Wi-Fi was playing a much bigger part in the larger business strategy. So what was the solution to that? Well, we expose our API. Our API framework is built upon a RESTful architecture, which allows it to seamlessly interact with web-based products like web pages and web applications. It uses that common language that helps to distribute the ability to create new ways of interacting with our platform. And not only that, but through our single sign-on environment, we're able to actually create and distribute the ability to create keys. These keys give us an opportunity to not just access the API, but it allows us to develop profiles, which further enhances what they can and cannot do. So their security platform can be completely segmented and siloed from access. And those other lines of business have a very specific view and can only touch what they need to in order to be more successful. Taking advantage of this allows them to use in-house experience. This means they're saving money by not having to look at third-party proprietary solutions, both for the service work in terms of leveraging the API and building some custom code, but also from a platform perspective. And so this ends up with a huge amount of savings for this particular customer. So finally, we look at our last item for balancing the budget today, and it's around simplified packaging. So here at Mojo, we want to take a look at what our packages bring to you. We have two. On the enterprise side, we really focus on bringing the best of access and security. So everything you need to deliver high-performing access and best-in-class security is comprised in this single license. It is a license that ties the access point to the cloud surface, rather than having to piece those apart. And it also includes software updates, 24/7 by 365 support, and a lifetime limited warranty. There's a challenge out there when you look at the economics of both purchasing and maintaining Wi-Fi. Complex SKUs, high maintenance costs that may not actually apply throughout the year. And very important is the RMA process, which can be particularly costly in terms of both time and resources spent. First, you contact your sales rep when an access point stops functioning. You get your RMA number, and you have to work with support to ensure that the device is in fact broken or unable to be fixed. And that process is adding to your downtime. Once that determination has been made, you first ship your device back. There can be delays in that process. Once the vendor gets it, they ship it back to you. Again, more delays, compounded depending upon where you are geographically, if the devices are being shipped internationally. And then you get your device and you have to re-upload it into your system and deploy it. What this causes is significant downtime, and many end users feel forced to buy backup devices. So in case this happens, they can limit their downtime, but they're adding costs by buying additional pieces of hardware. At Mojo, we've changed this process. In fact, we've removed it. Basically, if your device breaks or it is determined by working with our support team that it cannot be fixed, we will send you a new one next day. We recognize that leveraging that open hardware access point hardware allows us to be much faster with delivering new devices. And in addition to that, by separating our packages into these two elements, if you need best-in-class access and security, enterprise is your way. And for those that are looking to increase their engagement capabilities, to actually talk directly to their end users, we have our lead package. So between the two, we simplify the purchasing process and the maintenance process, and we include upgrades, support, and warranty throughout the life of that license as a way of helping simplify that process and balancing the budget overall. So guys, I want to thank you for taking some time today to look at really what we say the 5 things that you can do today to balance your Wi-Fi budget. They really span 3 major areas. First, removing hardware costs. So we look at a modern architecture that allows us to completely remove the need for a controller and leverage access points that are built on open standards and sold at factory costs. This next generation management, it allows us to automate the workflow, which saves time and resources. And by focusing our efforts on this management platform, we can build new innovative tools, easier to use, democratize access, and allow you to distribute troubleshooting and monitoring capabilities where most people are spending their time to level one support so that we can respond faster and keep our downtime at a minimum. All of this is leveraging extensible cloud architecture, which allows us to take advantage of an open framework to interact in new ways. And finally, we put all this together with very simplified packaging. You get the most from your investment, and you buy exactly what you need with all the components that are most required: support, upgrades, and RMA, all combined and included into that package. And so with that, I'd love to open the floor to see if there are any questions out there about what we've talked about today.
Great. Thank you for the terrific presentation, Sean. I'm just going to allow a minute here for everyone to think about any questions they might have and get them submitted. And while we do that, I wanted to point out the handout section. For all those on the call, Sean had earlier referenced an EMA paper around TCO and showed a graphic. And I just wanted to let everyone know that I have included that white paper and infographic for all of you today who are on the call. They are in the handout section, so there's a PDF for each. You can download those and take with you and share those to anyone you would like. In addition, just wanted to also point out that we are taking a break next week for the holiday from any webinars or webcasts that we have, and we're resuming the week of the 13th. So you can feel free to check out our schedule and the link I just put up in the chat window to join anything that might pique your interest as we run these live demo tutorials and webcasts every single Wednesday with various topics. And in addition, any of our on-demand webinars that interest you, you can feel free to just watch at your pleasure and anytime. So I actually don't see any questions coming up, Sean. I think you did quite a wonderful job running through everything. If you do have any questions that come up later, we encourage everyone to reach out to us at any time. You can call us at the number listed here or send us an email, myrep@mojonetworks.com, or visit the website. Connect through us through the website or chatter. And we appreciate all of you again taking the time to visit us today. And we look forward to seeing you online again. And thank you, Sean.
Thank you, everybody.